going on, y'all? Fabian Speaks. We are back with another video. It is the pride and ego of man that makes them think they can understand God's ways. It's wild to me when you ask people, you don't even really got to get specific. When people give their reasoning about why they don't believe in the Lord, and how they're confused on the understanding of why God allows certain things to happen. When there's disasters in the world, people always question the reality of the Lord. When people die, right? When someone close to your heart passes away, you're wondering and questioning and asking God, why did it happen? Why did it happen? And I don't know, it's natural for devastating occurrences when they happen to shake one's faith. I mean, we're human. We have feelings and emotions. But you got folks who validate or justify the reason that they don't believe in God based on life and world occurrences. People still don't really fully understand the concept of free will and how a really loving God would give free will, because a God that didn't love you would force you to worship him, right? But people can't understand that concept. Well, why does evil happen in the world? Well, there's free will. Well, why did he stop it? Well, if God had a control over which he does, but if God enforced his control, that wouldn't be a loving and caring God. Because to love someone, it has to be genuine. It has to come from yourself, your heart. When you pick your significant other, it's of your choosing, right? Maybe they have certain characteristics, certain things about them that made you fall in love with them. You fall in love with them. It's not a forcible love. So it's giving you the choice. That's essentially what free will is. Why would God force you to do anything? If you don't want to believe in him, that's on you. But when people say things that they just can't comprehend free will and why bad things happen, man, people make choices in the world. Now, just because something happens doesn't mean that that was God. People make choices, people make decisions, murderers kill people, people steal things off of the decisions they make themselves, and consequences have to be enacted or follow suit, right? But let's go ahead and hop into scripture, man, because there's a million different talking points when it comes to pride, the ego of men, and how wise people think they really are. So we're going to go ahead and start with Isaiah 55, 8 through 9 reads, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." So let's talk about that a little bit. We're talking about an omnipotent being, the creator, right? The potter, and you are the clay. Magnitude that's unexplainable, superior wisdom, a superior being. How would you think that you can understand the concept from literally he is the beginning and the end, the Aleph Tav, right? In Hebrew, he knows the beginning from the end. He knows the end from the beginning. He's in every place, in every timeline, simultaneously. He's seen it happen already. So when people try to think that their minuscule human brain and mind can understand the infinite of the Lord, it boggles me. And that's what goes back to the title of this video. It's pure pride and ego. We got folks who, they're scientists and, in the way of the world, they're geniuses. But when you understand the capacity, right? And we don't even fully understand the capacity of the Lord, right? No one's ever fully seen or fully taken in the full expression of God. It would destroy you, right? Even examples of Moses at the burning bush, he had to turn around at a certain point in time, right? He couldn't see God face to face. And that's just in the image. Imagine the thought process and the mindset behind God. Your brain would burst. So people have to really chill out and humble themselves to think that, one, you're dismissing God, but then you feel like you understand his ways. And this is why I really enjoy the passage that talks about it's for man to seek out things. It's for God to hide certain things, but it's for man to seek out, because there's so many mysteries in the word that if you're just reading the word surface level, you're not going to catch certain things or grasp it. And if you know how to naturally critical think, you'll understand. I think that for the safety of the human thought process, there's certain things in the word that, you can't really put. Imagine the timeline of the Bible. It's like to get very granular in detail, the Bible will be longer than it is currently. So even speaking to that, like there's so many more miracles and acts that I believe Jesus did that weren't always recorded in the Bible. Like he probably did infinite more than we fully understand throughout the word. But that just ties into the fact that there's so much more that God is privy on that he just knows that we couldn't handle. It's like for the greater good, right? It's like the government. They don't really tell society everything. They hide things because it's for your greater good. They believe that you wouldn't be able to even fathom or understand or be able to cope with some of the things that go on behind the scenes, right? That's just a random example. But I say all that to say that God's not going to reveal everything to you because he's God. He doesn't need to reveal everything to us. We're his children. A good parent doesn't expose everything to a child at an early age. Maybe when you grow and mature, there's more you learn and understand because you can handle it, right? So it's just crazy to me how folks will sit here and talk about the extent of God's love. And that's what I kind of want to segue into is a story, right? So I probably said this example before, used this story on one of these videos at a point in time. But, there was an artist, a hip hop artist, right? And we know the state of hip hop, it's very rah, right? It's very, street based and inner city, urban based culture, right? An artist had passed away. He got killed in his own city, right? And a lot of people were giving condolences to him. Hey man, RIP, RIP. A lot of people will say, hey man, rest well. God got you. And it's just crazy to read the comments because it's the carnal-minded Christian, right? I always talk about the carnal-minded Christian who thinks he's already got God figured out. Well, there's no way that God's going to love somebody like that, right? And so hear me out. Basically, people were showing love to this man and then saying prayers over him in the comments. And, God got you, man. We're praying for you, for your soul, XYZ, things along those lines. There's people who are responding in the comments saying, man, you think a person or an individual who lived his life like this was going to be accepted by God? Hey, God is not going to accept this person. He pushed murder. He pushed a certain type of culture that's not conducive or doesn't coincide with walking by the Spirit, being Christ-like. Does he have a valid point? Yes. Right? Obviously, God doesn't condone that particular lifestyle. And, a lot of those actions directly correlate to sin, a sinful life. But, in my heart, I already had grace. To understand that this is a person, right? This is a lost soul, essentially, who may have believed in God the whole time, Jesus the whole time. That's the thing, is like people can't fathom that people who commit crimes are actually like believers. People always lose their way, but there's people who believe in God that do bad things. We all are sinners. So what makes you better than the next person? And essentially in the word, sin is equal. Like if you commit a sin, it's the same as that you committed a sin. Sin is sin, period, right? So to that point, they just couldn't fathom the fact that God would love them because they lived a certain lifestyle and preached certain concepts through their music. And in my mind, I'm like, bro, you can't even fathom the love of God. And that's me just being humble, right? I don't understand the extreme of what if it, and one, I just don't understand the extreme of God's love. I don't fully comprehend it, but I understand the magnitude of his love. The love of Jesus, the sacrificial lamb and him dying on the cross for our sins. Like that's a magnitude you can't fathom or grasp. And that's something that your mind wouldn't grasp. Oh, but he was this way. God still loved him. And it relates to the person that was, hung up on the cross next to Jesus, right? If I'm incorrect, I think he was a murderer or he was a criminal, point blank, period. But obviously, he was honest with Jesus when he was on a cross next to him, saying, remember me, asking him to remember me. And obviously we know how Jesus acknowledges him and says that you will be, in paradise with me. So a person who's lived a certain timeline in their last minutes, we've seen it happen in the Bible to where they've put themselves with integrity out there, to Christ, to Jesus, to the Lord for acceptance, for renewal, for forgiveness, repentance, essentially. And Jesus in real time, right? We saw how he was still loving and accepting, while simultaneously he's being pinned to a cross. He's being left to die on a cross. Even in his most hurtful time, he's still accepting and love. So how can you even fathom? How can you even try to explain or understand that? I just know that his love is bigger than I can fathom in my human mind. God doesn't love how we love. Humans tend to love based on condition. It's not unconditional. The closest thing you'll get to unconditional love is maybe your parents, maybe family, but even that's drawing a fine line. It's always based on a condition in particular. So how can you sit here and say that God doesn't love him because of this? In his last dying moments, he could have, called out to Jesus as he took his last breath and just repented and asked for forgiveness. You know what I'm saying? And people always use the example of not everybody's going to have a chance to be on their deathbed to where they can actually come to God, or actually, really come to a realization that before they pass, they want to accept Christ into their life. But that's just an example of how I think a lot of people are very small-minded in the fact that they think they can understand God's ways, and you can't. You can't. This whole Big Bang theory and like planets exploded and it was a black hole and then the world appeared, because they can't fathom a creator, an innovator, a supreme mind that created galaxies and planets. It's just mind-boggling to me, man. Comment down below and let me know y'all's thoughts just on those talking points that I've mentioned. Like, the extremes of God's love is something we can't comprehend. His wisdom is something we can't comprehend. And he is all-knowing. He's seen every time period, every timeline, beginning to end. We're not even at the end yet. He already knows about what's going to happen. So Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Pride goes before destruction. And typically when these folks are very prideful, very egotistical, the narcissist mindset, they crash and burn, right? Being humble has a certain stability about it. That's why it's always encouraged, right? And always putting others before yourself. It's always encouraged in the word. But there's a balance, right? There's a foundation you have when you're humble. When you're prideful and you think you know everything, you will crash and burn very quickly, because in the reality, that's what the reality reflects, is that we don't know everything. You know what I mean? And that's why those people tend to not have such a good time, because they try to be the know-it-all. I believe when you come with a humble spirit, you kind of approach things, on your P's and Q's. You assess things a little bit more well-rounded. When you know it all, you just jump into things like you're A-okay, and that's how you get picked off, right? And I think that kind of attests to that verse right there. So James 4:6, but he gives more grace. Therefore it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And so naturally, being humble earns something from the Lord. Grace. Grace. Who would not want grace in the day and age that we live in? And just grace, period, especially from God. God's willing enough to give that to you, so why not accept it by kind of getting off your high horse and just understanding you don't know it all. The mindset is eons above human thinking. Like, people just really got to get real. Now, I don't know why this irks me so much when people just think they know everything about God. And I'm a student. We're all students, right? We're children. We want to learn as much as possible. That's why we pursue the Lord through prayer, through fasting. We stay in the Word. We pay attention to Jesus's teachings, right? We follow his path. We follow his way. But folks who just dismiss God because they haven't seen certain things, that they can't fathom certain things, I mean, that's the wrong thing, the way to go about it. We serve a supernatural God. We live in the natural. So just off the understanding that you know God is supernatural, you should understand that people don't even understand fully the supernatural in today, right? And I'm relating that to like paranormal stuff. You know, people, ghost hunters. Oh, you think they got the supernatural figured out? No, they just keep chasing it because it's intriguing to them. But that's an example of the supernatural in its existence. You can never really understand that because we are natural beings. We live in the physical. We haven't crossed over to the spirit realm. So it's just buffoonery to me when people, and obviously those are people of the world, right? But then again, like I said, because people of the world will always be lost. They will never have an understanding because God he never knew them, right? But it's the carnal-minded believers, right, that just have this God in such a box to where they just can't believe that. It's just the Pharisee mindset, man. It's like it's a weird kind of mindset to me. And it ties into my other video where I was speaking to the fact that, you know, God is able to do all things. So when you automatically put him in a box, you're limiting his capacity because you have to have belief in him doing that. So, hey, we're going to end the video there. Comment down below. Let me know y'all's thoughts on this. This tends to be a topic that a lot of people can relate to in the sense of they more so agree with the talking points, right? But since some people just can't fathom it being that way. So, peace, love, prosperity. God bless. We'll see y'all next time.